The arrival of the alien fleet hung in the silence of space. Their ships spread across the black sky like a net of steel and fire. Every commander on the bridge believed this day would be easy. They had faced many species before. They had broken armies, crushed rebellions, and made whole worlds kneel. Now they expected the same. The report said humanity was sending soldiers. Soldiers meant order, rules, training. Soldiers meant fear hidden behind uniforms. Soldiers could be defeated. But when the human ship arrived, nothing was as expected. The vessel did not glide with the elegance of the alien cruisers. It limped into the system, scarred and ugly, covered in black marks of old battles. Panels were mismatched, armor plates stolen from different wars. It looked more like a beast crawling from fire than a starship built with care. The aliens laughed when they saw it. This is what the humans send? Their voices filled with arrogance. Then the humans came out. The boarding channel connected, and the alien officers stood ready. They waited to see soldiers marching in perfect lines. Instead, a group of men and women walked in with loose steps, eyes glowing with something strange. They did not look afraid. They did not look controlled. They looked hungry. One alien whispered, "Why do they smile?" Because the humans were smiling, wide and sharp, as if they had been waiting for this moment all their lives. These were not ordinary fighters. Their uniforms were torn, patched with scraps of cloth. Some carried weapons that looked handmade, brutal in design, covered with marks like trophies. Others had scars running down their arms and faces, reminders of countless battles. They walked like predators, not soldiers. The alien commander stepped forward. "You are soldiers of Earth?" he demanded. A tall human with cold blue eyes tilted his head and laughed. "Soldiers? No, we are survivors." The words struck the air like a weapon. Survivors. Not soldiers, not trained pawns. Survivors from a Deathworld where everything tried to kill them. The aliens exchanged uneasy glances. They had studied Earth. They knew it was a hostile planet, filled with storms, predators, and endless dangers. But they had not understood what that truly meant. Now, standing face to face with these humans, they felt it. The weight of a world that forged monsters instead of men. One human woman pulled out a blade, not a ceremonial sword, but a jagged piece of metal sharpened perfection. She spun it casually in her hand, eyes never leaving the aliens. "So," she said with a grin, "who dies first?" The alien guards stepped back without meaning to. Their instincts screamed at them. Something was wrong. These were not soldiers. Soldiers followed orders. These humans looked as if they followed only one thing: chaos. The ship behind them gave another low growl, its engines echoing like a beast breathing. Lights flickered across its hull, revealing scars from 100 battles. The aliens realized with dread that this ship had not just survived wars, it had thrived in them. "Commander," one officer whispered, "this is not what we were promised. These are psychopaths." The commander clenched his jaw, but even he felt a cold chill. He looked again at the humans. They were still smiling, as if standing on the edge of war was a joke. Their eyes held no fear, no hesitation. Only hunger. The tall human leaned closer, his voice low but sharp. "You thought Earth would send soldiers. But Earth doesn't waste soldiers on you. They sent us." The silence that followed was heavier than any weapon. In that moment, the aliens finally understood. This would not be a clean war of formations and tactics. This would not be order against order. This would be madness against sanity, predators against prey, and the humans had just arrived. The first clash, the alien commander could not sleep that cycle. The image of those humans, smiling, scarred, unpredictable, stayed inside his mind like a shadow. He had fought wars for 40 years. But never had he seen enemies who walked into danger as if it were a game. His officers whispered in fear, but he silenced them with orders. "We will test them," he said coldly. "Send a scout force. They are only humans. They will break like all others." The order was given. Small strike ships launched into the black void. Their mission was simple: surround the human vessel, probe its defenses, and test their reaction. The aliens expected discipline. Soldiers always moved the same way, organized, careful, predictable. But the humans were not soldiers. When the alien ships closed in, the human starship did not retreat. It did not form a shield wall. Instead, it burst into sudden chaos. Engines roared, weapons fired in every direction, and the ship spun through the void like a predator attacking from instinct. The aliens were caught off guard. "What is this madness?" one pilot cried as his ship exploded into fire. Inside the human ship, the crew laughed. They shouted at one another, not in fear, but in excitement. A man at the controls slammed his fist against the console. "Faster! Let's see how many we can burn before breakfast." A woman reloaded a massive cannon by hand, her arms straining with effort, but her face glowing with wild joy. "Come closer, little birds," she yelled. "Let me clip your wings." The starship danced between the alien scouts. It was ugly, unpredictable, and alive. Alien formations fell apart instantly. Their careful discipline meant nothing against madness that the alien commander watched the battle feed in horror. The humans didn't fight like soldiers. Soldiers used plans, orders, and codes. These humans fought like beasts who had been caged too long and finally set free. One human shipboard fighter boarded an alien craft with nothing but a blade. The recording showed him screaming as he cut through armored guards, laughing even as blood sprayed his own face. He fought as if pain was fuel. Another human tore a control panel off the wall of their own ship, rewired it with bare hands, and used the sparks to ignite a stolen alien missile. He launched it back at its owners, blowing 3 strike ships into fire. The aliens panicked. Their voices filled the command bridge. "Commander, they don't follow logic. They are wasting fuel. No, wait, they're turning it into weapons. By the stars, what are they?" The commander's claws shook against the steel table. He wanted to believe this was still war. But war required rules, and the humans were breaking every rule with delight. The humans didn't move like trained fighters. They moved like survivors from a Deathworld, every action wild, ruthless, and effective. By the time the test was over, half of the alien scout ships were destroyed. The rest fled back into formation, trembling. On the human ship, victory was not celebrated with formal reports or disciplined salutes. Instead, the crew laughed, clapped each other on the back, and shared drinks from battered metal flasks. One of them raised a cup high and shouted, "To chaos." The others roared in reply. From the alien side, the commander stared in silence. His throat was dry, his eyes wide. He had wanted to test them. Instead, they had tested him. "These are not soldiers," he whispered to himself. "They are psychopaths." But the most chilling part came at the end. The humans opened a wideband channel to the alien fleet. Static filled the comms before a human voice cut through, rough and mocking. "Thanks for the warm-up. Next time, send someone interesting." The channel ended. The humans laughed again. The alien officers were silent. For the first time in years, an entire fleet felt something they had not felt in generations: fear. And this was only the first clash. The ship of nightmares, the alien fleet, had survived the first clash, but the fear inside their hearts had already begun to grow. Ships that once flew in perfect lines now kept their distance from the human vessel. Officers whispered on dark bridges, their voices trembling. The humans called it the Hound of Night. No official name was written across its hull. No banners flew from its masts. It was just a scarred beast, crawling through space like something half dead, half alive. From a distance, the alien commanders thought it was falling apart. Pieces of armor hung at odd angles, patched with plates stolen from old wars. Its engines gave out uneven bursts of fire, like a heartbeat gone wrong. The vessel looked weak, but the closer you came, the more you realized it was not weakness. It was hunger. The ship had been built, rebuilt, and rebuilt again, forged in fire after every battle. Whole sections were welded from enemy wreckage. Weapons that didn't belong together had been stitched side by side, forming a monstrous arsenal. Cannons, missile racks, plasma claws, all of them stolen, adapted, and sharpened for one single purpose: destruction. The aliens stared at it with growing dread. Ships were supposed to be tools. They obeyed orders, they fought wars, they carried soldiers. But this ship was different. It looked as if it had learned to fight on its own. It carried scars like trophies. It breathed like a predator. And worst of all, it seemed to enjoy the hunt. The alien high commander ordered a close scan. Probes flew across the human hull, recording its surface. But every time the scan touched a new plate of armor, the sensors screamed with corrupted data. Systems glitched. Readouts froze. It was as if the ship itself hated being studied. One alien officer reported, "Sir, it's rejecting our scans. Rejecting." As though it was alive. Inside the ship, the humans were no better. They had turned the interior into a chaos of steel and blood. Hallways were covered with mark scratches carved by knives, burn lines from plasma fire, stains of battles that were never cleaned. The humans did not hide their violence. They decorated with it. Every corner carried trophies, helmets of fallen enemies. Broken alien weapons hung on walls. Strange bones, polished and tied together, lined the mess hall. The humans sat there like kings of death, laughing while surrounded by reminders of what they had killed. One alien spy who was captured described it in a single broken word before he died: nightmare. The nickname spread across the Empire. The Hound of Night was no longer seen as just a human warship. It became a shadow in every soldier's mind. When alien pilots dreamed, they saw its scarred hull crawling through the void. When officers looked at their maps, they swore the starship's outline shifted closer on its own. The alien commander tried to keep control. He told his fleet, "It is just a ship, no more dangerous than any other vessel." But his officers shook their heads. They had seen it in battle. Ships didn't fight like that. Ships didn't play, and the humans treated the starship like a living friend. They spoke to it. They patted its walls like one might pat a hound. "Good girl," one pilot whispered after the ship tore through an enemy formation. Another kissed the hull before leaving on a raid. The aliens watched all of this through stolen recordings and could not understand. Was it madness? Was it ritual? Or was the ship truly alive, bound to its psychopath crew? That night, in the silence of deep space, the alien commander received a private message from his intelligence officer. It was a single line, no explanation attached. "We are not fighting a starship. We are fighting a nightmare." The commander sat in silence for a long time. He looked at the glowing map of the battlefield, at the scarred dot moving slowly among his fleets. For the first time in his life, he did not feel like a predator. He felt like prey, and somewhere beyond his vision, the humans laughed inside their beast of steel, sharpening blades, loading stolen weapons, and whispering to the Hound of Night as if it were listening, because maybe it was fear spreads in the Empire. Fear is a slow poison, but once it enters the blood, it spreads everywhere. That is what happened inside the alien empire After the first clashes with the humans. At first, the High Council laughed. Reports came from the front lines about a single damaged ship crewed by wild humans. The Council called it a rumor, an exaggeration from cowardly officers. One ship cannot frighten an empire, they declared, but the truth traveled faster than their lies. Every surviving pilot brought back the same story, the starship that refused to die, the humans who laughed, while burning entire wings of fighters, the ship that looked alive. They spoke of the Hound of Night, and every word carried the taste of terror. Soon, whispers filled the barracks. Soldiers spoke of humans not as enemies, but as demons from a cursed world. Commanders barked orders, but even they avoided saying the humans' name. It was safer to call them the Deathworlders. In taverns on distant colonies, rumors grew darker. Some said the human ship fed on the fear of its enemies. Others said the crew were criminals, too dangerous even for Earth, sent into space not as soldiers, but as punishment. Still others claimed the humans could not die at all, that even if their bodies were broken, they would crawl forward laughing until the last breath left their lungs. One alien merchant in the central hub whispered to another, "They are not soldiers. They are nightmares given flesh." The words spread like fire. On the outer edges of the empire, fleets began to hesitate. They refused orders to engage the humans directly. "We will defend our stations," they told their commanders, "but we will not chase the Hound." Even hardened veterans lowered their eyes when the subject came up. The empire had always ruled through fear. But now fear was ruling them. Inside the human ship, the crew knew it. They could see the hesitation in the enemy's movements. They could hear the pauses in their comms. The humans drank, laughed, and painted fresh marks on their hull, each mark for a ship they had destroyed. The vessel looked even more monstrous with every victory. "They're cracking," one human muttered, running a hand across a new scar. "In the wall." "They should crack," another replied with a grin. "We're not fighting a war. We're teaching them to fear." Back in the Empire's core, the High Council finally held a secret meeting. The chamber was filled with silence as they listened to the latest reports. One general stood up, his voice trembling despite his polished armor. "We cannot treat them like soldiers. They do not fight like soldiers. They are chaos. They are predators. We send fleets, and they devour them. They steal our weapons and turn them against us. If we do not change our tactics, the people will lose faith in us." The council leader hissed, "Change tactics? Against a handful of humans? You exaggerate." But even as he spoke, another report arrived. A mining world had been evacuated after a single sighting of the human ship. No battle had even occurred, just the shadow of the Hound. Passing near the system had been enough to send millions fleeing. The council leader's words died. In his throat, it was no longer a war of ships and numbers. It was a war of fear, and the humans were winning without even firing a shot. Among the common people, children told ghost stories at night. They said if you closed your eyes, you could hear the humans laughing in the dark. Parents warned there, "Young to behave, or the Deathworlders will come." The Empire had always believed itself untouchable. But now, its own people believed something else. The Empire could bleed. And humans were the knife. In the end, the fear reached even the highest throne. The Emperor himself listened to the reports in silence, his claws tapping against the stone table. He looked at his trembling generals and asked a question none wanted to answer. If this is how they fight with one ship, what happens if Earth sends a fleet? The chamber fell silent. No one had an answer. And far across the stars, inside the scarred beast of steel, the humans laughed again, because they knew fear was their greatest weapon, and it was already spreading like fire through the Empire's veins. The breaking point, the alien empire was vast, built on countless worlds, powered by endless fleets. But even the strongest walls can crack if enough pressure is applied. And the humans knew exactly where to push. It began with stolen weapons. The crew of the Hound of Night did not simply destroy enemy ships. They stripped them. Every plasma cannon, every missile rack, every energy cell was pulled apart, studied, and rebuilt. The ship became a patchwork monster of alien technology welded onto human chaos. Where other species needed years to study new weapons, humans took only days. They learned by breaking things and then turning the broken parts into something deadlier. Soon, the alien commanders saw their own weapons firing back at them. A plasma barrage, meant to burn the humans instead, lit up their own frigates. Missile guidance systems, once safe against enemy tampering, now obeyed human hands. The Empire was forced to watch as its most advanced tools of war were twisted into instruments of madness. But the most terrifying part wasn't the weapons. It was the laughter. Whenever the humans fought, they laughed. They roared as ships exploded. They joked as fire licked through the halls. To them, war was not duty or honor. It was survival, and survival was fun. That one battle became infamous across the Empire. A human boarding squad entered a cruiser, outnumbered 10-1. The aliens fought with precision, blades raised in perfect formation. But the humans tore through them like beasts. One man bit into an enemy's throat. A woman smashed her gun against a wall just to use the sharp edge of the broken barrel as a weapon. Blood soaked the corridors, and yet the humans laughed until their enemies fell silent. The recording of that massacre was smuggled out. Within weeks, the entire Empire had seen it. Soldiers refused to fight. Colonies refused to pay taxes. Fear became rebellion. The High Council screamed for unity, but even their voices cracked. For every fleet they sent, another was destroyed. For every command they gave, another world disobeyed. The Empire's great machine of order was falling apart. And then came the breaking point. A grand fleet of 200 ships was gathered, the largest armada in decades. It was meant to crush the Hound of Night once and for all. Generals promised victory. The Emperor himself watched from a throne aboard a golden flagship. The fleet stretched across the void like a wall of firepower. The humans attacked anyway, not with strategy, not with caution, with chaos. The Hound dove straight into the center of the formation. Alarm screamed. Ships fired on instinct, but the humans turned every mistake into opportunity. They darted between cruisers, letting them shoot at each other. They launched stolen weapons, confusing friend and foe. They cut through the middle of the fleet like wolves through a herd. And all the while, the humans broadcast their laughter across open channels. Every ship in the Armada heard it, the wild joy of Deathworld psychopaths tearing into the Empire's pride. When the battle ended, only half the fleet survived. The golden flagship limped away in silence, its emperor pale with fear. The humans drifted through the wreckage, gathering trophies, painting new scars across their hull. For the Empire, that was the breaking point. The soldiers began refusing orders outright. Entire garrisons deserted. Colonies declared independence, choosing chaos over imperial rule. Generals whispered of rebellion. And in every whisper, one name was feared above all others: humanity inside. The Hound, the crew sat among their trophies. A woman raised her drink, her smile sharp as the blade at her side. "They thought they could break us," she said, "but it's their empire that's breaking." The others roared with laughter, because they knew the truth. The empire was no longer fighting a war. It was running from nightmares, and nightmares never stop. The collapse of the empire had stood for centuries. It had crushed rebellions, silenced uprisings, and ruled through fear. But now, fear was no longer their weapon. It was their prison. Everywhere the Hound of Night passed, worlds fell silent. Colonies that once raised banners for the Empire now tore them down, afraid that humans would notice their loyalty and come for them next. Fleets that once filled the skies stayed hidden in hangars, unwilling to face the starship that moved like a beast. The collapse began quietly. A governor on the outer rim refused to send soldiers. "I will not feed my people to nightmares," he declared. His world went dark, cutting off communication with the capital. Soon others followed. Then came the mutinies. On one ship, an entire crew murdered their own commander when he ordered them to face the humans. They took control of the vessel and fled into deep space. On another, soldiers destroyed their own engines. So they could never be forced into battle again. The Empire tried to respond with terror. Commanders executed deserters. Councils punished colonies. But punishment only made the fear stronger. Because every soldier asked the same question in secret. If the Empire cannot stop the humans, why should we die for it? In the heart of the Empire, the Emperor sat on his golden throne, but his crown felt heavier each day. Reports flooded in. Fleets gone, colonies lost, uprisings spreading. Every message carried the same shadow: the humans. The Hound of Night. Deathworld psychopaths with a starship. The Emperor called his advisors. "We must negotiate," he said. Finally, his voice low. "If fear is stronger than loyalty, then perhaps mercy can bring stability." But even as he spoke, a new transmission arrived. The humans had taken another stronghold, not just with fire, but with cruelty. They had captured enemy weapons, turned them against their owners, and left messages carved into steel walls. One message burned brighter than all. "This is only practice." The Emperor's hands shook. Mercy was impossible. Negotiation was useless. How do you bargain with predators who saw war as entertainment? Meanwhile, on distant worlds, the legend of the humans grew darker. Farmers whispered that the humans drank the fire of suns. Children believed the ship was made from the bones of 1,000 enemies. Even generals began to dream of human laughter echoing in their ears. The collapse was no longer military. It was psychological. Entire star systems surrendered before a battle could begin. Commanders fled, abandoning fleets. The Empire's map, once a proud circle of control, now cracked like broken glass. Inside the Hound, the crew celebrated. They sat among piles of stolen weapons, drinking, laughing, painting new scars on their walls. To them, every fallen world was just another story, another joke. They spoke of the Empire not as an enemy, but as prey that didn't know it was already. Dead. One man leaned back in his chair, scars running across his jaw. "They thought fear would rule forever," he said with a grin. "Now fear belongs to us." The others roared in agreement. The humans didn't just fight wars. They infected minds. They showed every soldier, every citizen, every leader that the Empire could bleed, could fall, could break. And once that truth spread, nothing could hold it back. By the end of the cycle, the Empire was no longer whole. Fleets deserted, colonies rebelled, and the Emperor himself locked his palace doors. The once mighty rulers of the stars hid in silence, terrified of a single ship and the monsters who crewed it. The collapse had begun. But for the humans, this was not the end. It was only the beginning. Humanity's dark victory. The galaxy had grown used to the Empire's rule. For generations, their fleets had darkened the skies of countless worlds. No one had dared to resist. No one had dared to believe the Empire could fall. Until the humans came. By now, the name Hound of Night was known in every corner of space. Merchants whispered it, soldiers feared it, children dreamed of it. Whole colonies surrendered at the very rumor of its approach. The Empire had once been a mountain of steel. Now it was dust, scattered by the chaos of one ship and its crew. Final blow came not in a battle, but in silence. The Emperor vanished. Some said he fled to the edge of the stars. Others said the humans had already found him. Whatever the truth, his throne remained empty, his fleets leaderless. The Empire was dead, though no one dared to say it aloud. On the bridge of the Hound, the humans sat in the glow of shattered stars. Their ship, scarred and monstrous, floated among the wreckage of another defeated fleet. The crew drank, laughed, and carved fresh marks into the walls. Each scar was a memory, a reminder of the chaos they had unleashed. One woman raised her cup. Her voice echoed through the dark hall. "We asked for war, and they gave us an empire. Now look at its ashes." The crew roared with laughter, their voices wild, echoing through the steel like a chorus of predators, celebrating the hunt. But beneath the laughter, there was something colder. The humans were not finished. One of them, the tall captain with ice in his eyes, stood at the center of the bridge. He looked at the burning remains on the screen, whole worlds trembling, whole fleets shattered. Slowly, he smiled. "They thought Earth would send soldiers," he said. His voice was low, sharp, carrying across the hall. "But Earth sent us instead, and now the galaxy knows the truth." He raised his hand, pointing at the stars beyond. This was just practice. The crew fell silent for a moment. Then they laughed again, louder, harsher, as if the sound itself could tear through the void. In that moment, every surviving soldier of the Empire, every frightened colony, every whispering child across the galaxy felt it. The war was not ending. It was only changing. The Empire had collapsed, but something worse had taken its place. The humans had not fought for peace. They had not fought for glory. They had fought because chaos was in their blood, because survival was their game, because fear was their greatest weapon. And now, the galaxy itself trembled under that weapon. In the years to come, stories of the Hound of Night would spread like fire. Some would call the humans saviors for destroying a cruel empire. Others would call them monsters for enjoying the destruction. But all agreed on one thing. The galaxy would never be the same again. On the ruined bridge of their nightmare ship, the humans smiled into the dark. Their scars shone under dim lights, their eyes burned with hunger, and their laughter filled the void. Victory was theirs, but it was not a clean victory. It was not noble. It was a dark victory, and the stars would remember it forever.